Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this really chilly Tuesday evening. It's so lovely to see so many familiar faces in the crowd. And hello to everybody on the live stream as well. I'm so lucky to be joined by May Diansangu and Rachel Plummer, who will be reading from their new poetry collections. I think we agreed on 3 fun facts. Not me, but they, the artists, said they wanted to do 3 fun facts, and I've never ever heard that before. So I'm gonna start because that's always the hardest. 1 fun fact about me: I work at Lighthouse. I don't know if that's fun. It is. Fun fact number 2. I'm also a writer. These aren't very fun. Okay, number 3. It's got to be a really good one. I stole a paintbrush today. I'm gonna be honest. Okay. Yes, be game to crime. Okay. After that, May, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I just got really excited there. I was going to list all my shoplifting exploits, and then I remembered that this is actually being recorded, so I don't know if Hi, I'm May. I don't know if the facts about me are interesting, but I work in a school, which is fun. I'm a classroom assistant, so I get really nice holidays. And also it's kind of a nice job as well. I am from the great grey granite city of Aberdeen, which is wonderful, and you should all come and visit it. I feel like not enough people come and see us. It's kind of like psychologically further away than you think it is. Like, it's just on the train, it's not that far. So like a lot of my work is influenced by that greyness, that dourness, and that northeast Scotsness. And I have a little dog. Oh yeah, she's very cute. Called Rue. And which I think is a very nice name, but a lot of people are like, is that after RuPaul? No. Yeah, I know. No. Actually, Zendaya's character in Euphoria. Which, I don't know if it's like that's the worst thing to name your dog after. So yeah, that's me. I'm very excited to be here, so it's great to see you all. Thank you.
Hello. So my 3 fun facts. None of them are including the shoplifting. I'm sorry. So I spent the first few years of my life in a tiny village called Little Gidding, which is only famous for the poem, which is by Tapsalteerie, called Little Gidding, one of his 4 quartets, and it's a small village. There's like 4 houses. It's tiny, and it's literally the only interesting thing about it is this poem, to the point where in the church, instead of Bible verses, they've embroidered lines from the poem on like all the cushions and everything. They're obsessed. The second fun fact about me, my favourite poem of all time was written by a 7-year-old. I teach creative writing, and the things they write are amazing. It was for Burns Night, and it was a few years ago, and I asked them to write their own versions or interpretations of some of the famous Burns poems, and I gave them a few to look at. And she wrote this poem that was only 2 lines long, and it went like this: my love is like a primrose, my love shares her month with the snowdrop. It's my favourite poem. And my 3rd fact, this is completely true. I used to be the editor of the South of England Hamster Journal. Oh yeah. So, be jealous.
Has that ever been featured on the Line of News for you?
Not that I know of, but that would be amazing.
Wow, I wish I'd gone last because your fun facts were really good. Okay, so we're going to get into the poetry. As I said, we've got 2 collections to look at today, and what I'm going to ask you guys to do is just give us a brief summary of what this collection is about, and then read us 3 poems. How does that sound? Good. Okay.
I might just consult the blurb, because I think Duncan said it better than I did. No, I know what I wrote about. I do. No, thank you for believing me. I think a lot of how I write, I feel like it really comes from the body, and whether that comes across or not, that's how I experience it. I mean, it's called Blood Songs, and the title felt correct because I was like, oh yeah, these are like songs from the blood. Whatever that means, that's kind of how it felt writing it, and when they're all on the page, that's how I kind of categorize them. So I'm very interested in the body. I'm very interested in myth and folklore, which we were kind of discussing downstairs as well. So yeah, and I think I bring a lot of myself to my poems, but in a way that is kind of I have a level of distance. So I talk about those queerness and blackness, and it feels quite political. But I'm doing that from quite a safe space because it's like I've made it into art. So it's like, oh well, you know, it's kind of like when you make a joke because you don't want to talk about something that's serious. I think I sometimes do that with poems. So was that okay, Duncan? Does that sound better?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think I do something really similar. I was going to say pretty much a very similar thing. I really like stories, and I do a lot of like oral storytelling. And I think that a lot of my poems are just stories. And when I want to talk about something, especially something that means a lot to me or that I'm very interested in, I find the easiest way to do it is through a story. And I think it's the same thing with it. That's how I make it into art rather than just a sort of blot of all my feelings about it. So yeah, I'd say that it's a lot of stories. Digital poems. Okay, so can you all hear me okay with this microphone?
I might just move the stand.
So I'm going to start with a poem about Iris. Iris is a character I invented, but she's kind of taken from a lot of people that I know, people that I've met. She started out when I met the real life strongest granny in the world. That's how she described herself. She was the world women's over 70s weightlifting champion. She was not called Iris, but she was incredible. She's like one of the best people I've ever met, and she's tiny and very strong. And she was at a poetry festival in Italy, and she kept saying, and I must go soon because I have to find a local gym to do some training. Tiny, strong granny. So I wrote a series of Iris poems, again, not about that real person who I don't want to be sued by, but about this character of Iris, who is a granny who has a lot of very exciting adventures. So this is Iris. We're all over 18. This is Iris, the oldest porn star in the world. Iris makes love to the camera, cool glass warming to her heat, shutter clacking at her touch like the spines of a poisonous fish. She caresses it, licks the lens, she wants it wet. Give it to me, darling, she says, and her vulva is a dark room. Baths of acetic acid and the intimate smell of ammonia. She lets it all show. The sleepy sag of her labia, clitoris new butterfly textured, wet-winged and slow to unfurl in the studio light. The camera is a candid lover. The camera loves her milky eyes, the rotten pears of her breasts, hairy nipples, hanging like empty promises. All she cares for, she says, is the click in the dark, like the wink of an eye. The way orgasm comes in a flash and illuminates everything. So that's my Iris. in this book there's a few different sequences of poems, as well as some kind of individual poems that aren't within the sequence. But one of the sequences is about mushrooms. I really like nature poetry and nature, and I spend a lot of time outdoors. And I spent a year as writing residence at Craiglockart Hill, and during that year I tried to write a poem for every mushroom I identified over the course of the year, and so some of them made it into this sequence. The one I want to read to you today is called Yellow Stainer, and it's a lovely mushroom. It's a mushroom that is white, quite big, and it has a lovely kind of dusty pink gills underneath, and it's called the Yellow Stainer because if you brush it, even quite lightly on the top, where you've touched goes very bright, kind of neon yellow, and you can put your name on it, and it's a lovely mushroom. It is technically edible by some people, but there are a proportion of people who, if they eat it, will get, and I quote, gastric distress. So most foragers consider it not worth the risk, because you don't know until you try whether you're one of those, like I think it's like 1 in 5 people will gastric distress. So, Yellow Stainer. This is my Yellow Stainer poem. Ever taken your witch to the woods, full-bladdered, and made her squat? Returned in a month to find a spill of mushrooms, pale-topped and pink underbellied, folds of soft pink to put your pink fingers in, to fill, to know, like the wasp knows the stamen, its dust of yellow pollen, the way the mushroom will lift its yellow skirt at the sight of you, the way it will, when pink fingernailed, let go of all the yellow it has held until it can't be kept inside. Sickening, sickening, but only to some. And I think I'd like to finish with a love poem. A lot of these poems are love poems, just not always the most conventional. But there's, we're all video game players here, right? Do we all know Mario? Yeah, and we all know Luigi. So this is my poem, written many years ago, not based on recent events. This is my poem, The Woman Who Married Luigi. You weren't the obvious choice, muted, not like your brother, who was red-breasted as a Coca-Cola Santa. You were green, tall and slender as a poplar, your leaps ungainly, shy, a mustachioed Bambi, all knee, all prominent rib. You caught my eye like a feather from the air. You grew to twice your former size under my hot water gaze. Little brother, your plumber's hands, your handful of wrench, your eyes, our love, mushrooming in the shadow.
Really lovely. Like it's so thank you. I always get like when I'm at an event to share my own work, and especially when I'm with other people who are doing the same, I always forget like, oh now it's my turn, because I'm just like really like, oh that's really good, who's next? I can't wait to hear what they've got to say. That was really lovely. We were talking about one of my. I don't have an embarrassing crush. My embarrassing crush is Jesus Christ. It's worse because it's like it's not just regular Jesus, it's gay Jesus. So it's like totally not reciprocated. So this poem is called Gay Jesus. Gay Jesus turns water into buckfast. sucks the fever from a young boy's blood and swallows, serves, feeds the children. Gay Jesus offers his flesh so the hungry can taste him, enter him and live there. Gay Jesus queers the law of nature, sachets across water, knows the sanctity of bodily fluids, converts saliva into salvation, spits to switch on blind eyes, laughs when Mary, the best day from Bethany, tickles his feet with her hair. Gay Jesus gets high off this sacred rebellion, intimacy between two reviled bodies. Gay Jesus is a Pisces sun, Aquarius moon, Scorpio rising. Gay Jesus has daddy issues. Gay Jesus kisses Judas back, whispers, I have waited my whole life for this, knows he was purpose built to be kissed by this man, gladly follows God's plan along the edge of his tongue. Gay Jesus bleeds, honest wounds that tease the soldier who wants to fuck him but kills him instead. Gay Jesus weeps, afraid and unashamed, the patron saint of those brutalized by the state. Gay Jesus dies, knowing his sacrifice means nothing when his siblings on earth are crucified. And on to continue the blasphemy, I do seem to have like a preoccupation with biblical figures. And I think it speaks to, we were having a little conversation downstairs about stories and myths and the power that they have and how we can really identify, ourselves in those themes, and there's reasons why we keep retelling the same stories and the same myths. So while these biblical characters did kind of feel a little bit off limits because, you don't really want to, I don't know, get banned in Texas or anything. Wouldn't that be awful? I think when people read my poems, they think, oh yeah, you must have had like a religious upbringing or something. Like, why are you, and in some ways I did, because our culture is so like influenced by Christianity, whether we like to believe that or not, and so many of the these kind of like arbitrary morals and social norms, they come from this kind of like Victorian Christianity, so it does feel very pervasive, and it feels like this I'm just trying to justify myself so I don't get cancelled. I don't hate Jesus. I love him. Call me. So this one is called Mary Magdalene. I don't think she's gay. I do think she's probably trans though in this poem. And black, of course. Mary Magdalene. 3 days before her 86th birthday, Mary Magdalene rewrites the Bible, dedicated to everyone whose survival has been criminalized. She deletes every instance where black represents suffering and death. Now, darkness is a symbol of strength, hope, and purity. The Gospel of Mary is frothing with God slayers and shame eaters, saints in leather whose bodies burn with the language of rebel angels cast out for being too proud. Mary smiles out loud as she drops the first draft in the Last Supper group chat. Peter is typing. Simon is typing. Peter is typing. Matthew is typing. Peter, let's be honest, Mary. Casting you in the original was just pandering and virtue signaling. Now you're shitting on the source material? This obsessive need to wokeify everything is embarrassing. Please stop. Matthew is still typing. God has left the chat. Mary yawns. For decades, these small men have tried to abridge her, but she remains a giant, of a woman. She is canon. She is the source material. Mary Magdalene sparks a joint and concludes her gospel. The good news is we can save ourselves. The bad news is we probably won't. Woman. This poem's called Medusa. It is in Scots, so if there's any words that you don't recognise, don't ask me, please Google it. Google it. No, I probably won't know. It's been a while since I wrote these, you know. I do use the Scottish dictionary, the Scottish language dictionary a lot when I'm writing in Scots, because not all of the words are necessarily come from the northeast or Doric. It's just whatever nice kind of like fun textural words I can find in Scots. So it's a bit of a mishmash. But I do try and keep that like northeast, those little like sort of like notes. What I can't find my words. So if you need any clarification of it, it's maybe ask Duncan, I don't know. Your Scots might be better than mine. Is it? We'll find it. Okay. So this poem is called Medusa. It's nae easy being seen. My skin hums with tender purples and greens to ken. It petrifies these men to keep at the victim. Ance upon a myth, I learnt there's a right way to be wronged. You have to tell the bleed to hud its wished, simmer down. Nobody wants to hear you bruise in real time. But the body I bade in, the een I was betrayed in, just couldn't stop fae hissing with shame. So I hid for the world. I try and mind fa was afore the isolation. I think maybe I'd been bonny, or at least my reflection never threatened to kill me. These days, I can't even look at myself. Audrey Hepburn shades to clave my gaze. I stotter into the outside. There's a puddock in my stomach, marking my guts dubby. I'm feared Abdi can see it. A belligerent sun biles my dread. Molten fear slithers down my heat. The man in the salon evangelizes his religion. Welcome to the kirk of self-care. Round these parts, love isn't a monstrous thing. You can bottle it, then anoint yourself, and in you do not, you can love somebody else. Fit a flag I get, to feel velvet for a soft fingertips would be. The high priest of wheelness descales my loneliness. Matted cantrips are gently teased out, a lather of prayers massaged into the root. Fine feed for hungry skin. The memory of being touched floods my een, sinks the body to the deepest parts of my dreams. A place where I am held, a place where I am seen.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, May. It's really beautiful to hear somebody speak in Scots, even if you don't fully understand. You get the inflections and you kind of get the tone behind it. And thank you so much, Rachel, as well, for your beautiful poetry. And now we get to talk about it. We're not taking audience questions, but I'm also not such a big rule follower. So if you have like a really urgent question, you can ask. It's okay. But I wanted to jump into talking about sexuality. You both read poems that show a confidence about people's sexuality from people that we might not expect. You know, people don't speak about adult stars' enjoyment of sex and enjoyment of performing. And you speak about Mary Magdalene and gay Jesus. Why these characters? Like, why? What are you trying to like say about sexuality? What do you understand about your own sexuality in looking at these characters that we might not usually exalt as like sexual beings? Rachel, do you want to start? On the spot?
Yeah, I mean the whole point of Iris in a way for me was about the way that I think as women and women adjacent people age, they can disappear from stories. That's why she's a granny, because in the stories they're no longer the main character, they're the protagonist's granny. They're only seen in relation to other people, and as a granny they are that archetype. They can't be anything but a granny. So the whole point was to try and put Iris into these situations where you wouldn't expect a granny to be. There's having these adventures, doing these things that you think you wouldn't see in a story normally. And a big part of that is sexuality. I think there's this idea that as women get older, they just sort of fossilise and become nuns in the convent, which is really interesting because I think from a kind of lesbian women who are interested in women perspective, as somebody who is interested in women, I think it's been my experience that a lot of us find older women really hot. And I think it's a weirdly straight thing to think that older women are not and that are sexless, because all the lesbians I've ever known find older women very interesting. So I suppose it was partly about that. I wanted to, it was intentionally meant to be shocking. I wanted it to not only be sexual, but not sexual like behind closed doors in a secret, private, with granddad sort of way, but in a very bold, like, outspoken, performative thing, and to imply that there would be people who would want to watch that and who would pay to watch that. So that's where that comes from.
There's people laughing, but you definitely find older women attractive, and people will tell you when that you're signing the books. I just want to affirm that. People are like, it's like that.
I'm laughing because it's so true. Yeah. I don't think I've actually really. I think it's something that I know. It's like a self-evident truth, but like hearing you say it there, I've like not actually verbalized or kind of. But like that's such a straight man thing. I'm starting to believe that the majority of straight men just don't actually like women. Like maybe they're actually gay. Like that would make it make more sense, you know. Just like, do you even like women? You know. Anyway, it's not that. I think with Gay Jesus and Mary Magdalene, I think part of what I was doing with that was like I wanted to make those characters, those myths, like accessible and available to me and other people who might be like me or like have the same interests and feelings as I do. Because I feel like historically they've been shut off from me for obvious reasons. You know, there's a lot of like churches that I wouldn't be welcoming. Not that I necessarily want to go to church, but it's like, hey, you don't always want to go to the party, but it's nice to be asked. So I think, queering Jesus really was about, just making that accessible and reclaiming it and being like, this is a figure, this is a myth that has impacted my life and my, the culture that I'm part of, in myriad ways. So like, why shouldn't I be able to see aspects of myself in him? And so I think part of that was definitely where Gay Jesus kind of came from. Mary Magdalene, I feel like there's more I want to like explore with her, and I think there was a lot of when I was writing that poem, there was a lot of thoughts like coming to like I just. Also, it doesn't say it in the poem. I was like, I said at the beginning, like she's definitely in my head, and when I was writing it, I was like, this is a black trans woman, obviously. Like that just makes sense to me. And I feel like again, it's about these. these stories that seem so familiar, but they're not. When you can't recognize yourself in them, what's the point in having like this universal myth if it's not yours? And in terms of sexuality, actually with Mary Magdalene, I wanted to make her slightly less sexual because I feel like she's been weirdly sexualized throughout the history, and apparently she wasn't even a sex worker, which I found like that was part of the poem as well. I was like kind of working on this thing that like John had started this rumor because he didn't like her, so there was like a whole I think she maybe needs her own she needs her own gospel, I think. So did that answer the question?
I want to see you write the Mary Magdalene Gospels so bad. I think you'd be amazing. Yeah, definitely. I also wanted to get back to stories and like the different characters that you employ, and you spoke about like writing short stories as poetry, Rachel. So specifically to you, I wanted to ask about mushrooms and nature and how you get inspiration from that, and what made you go to the ground basically to find your poetic voice.
It's really interesting because it's exactly what you were saying, May, about putting yourself into these places where you might not necessarily be welcome, and I think that's what I'm trying to do with nature poetry, in a way. Nature poetry and the kind of rural. I grew up in a very rural area, which was very unwelcoming to queerness, and I think a lot of the idea of countryside spaces and nature poetry, nature writing can feel very conservative and very unwelcoming to anything different. And it can feel like a very unsafe space, even just as a woman to be in those spaces can be very unsafe. And so a lot of when I was writing the mushroom poems that year, it was the year of what was the name of the lady down in London who was murdered by the policeman? Who's going off my head? Yeah, Sarah Brown. It was this sort of the year that was happening and was a lot spoken about, and I was out walking in the evenings because I'm a carer for my son who has special needs, his intellectual disability, and I can't go out very much, but I can go out in the evening when my partner can watch him, and so I would go out in the evenings to walk, and it always makes me feel a bit uneasy to walk in the woods at night or in the evening when it's getting dark. And I remember particularly once when I had my phone in my hand, I was making notes on my phone about the mushrooms, and an older man berated me for having my phone out and not living in the moment out in nature. And I remember thinking, well, there's lots of reasons actually why a woman walking on her own after dark in the woods might have her phone in her hand ready to go, which would obviously not occur to that sort of man. And I commemorated him in all the poems about the dead man's fingers from this. So it was about, I suppose, trying to put on. That makes it sound too deliberate, maybe, but I suppose what I was doing was putting queerness and that aspect of myself into nature, very sort of overtly, because I didn't want to hide it. I didn't have like my queer poems and my nature poems, and my nature poems can go in the nice journals, and my queer poems can go in the queer journals. I wanted it. I wanted it to be there, in all of it. So I suppose that's what I was trying to do with those. And I'm just obsessed with mushrooms. I made this dress. It has mushrooms. I think there's something about mushrooms. Queer people do love mushrooms too. Older women and mushrooms. And I think it's because they're beautiful, like flowers. But people like flowers in a very obvious way, where they're not thinking too hard. Flowers are just pretty, and you're supposed to like them. But mushrooms, you have to look at them twice and think, oh, actually, they are really beautiful. I think that's really
Thank you so much. I was also told by
I think
somebody
the microphone's gone off.
Oh,
Hi.
hello. Oh, thank you very much. I was also told by someone to like look up from my phone. Yeah, when I was walking. Screw that person. But yeah, how can you police how people walk through live? Yeah, live. May, I wanted to ask you. We know that some of the poems are in Scots, and you speak about being from the northeast. And I love that as a poet, you rep Aberdeen so much. Someone has to literally. Yeah, I ran for the hills and like never looked back. But I wanted to ask about the voices that are not so obvious in the poetry. The first time I heard you read was at Blunt Knife, like years ago. And yeah, what voices are coming through in the poetry? What else informs like? Because Blood Songs is like a very visceral title. Like it sounds like something like really urgent. Could you speak about where like inspiration came from, or other languages, other perspectives came from that might not be so obvious in the poetry?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if my poetry is subtle enough for things not to. If you see the voice there, it's probably. So like where are the poems coming from?
Yeah.
Is that what you? I guess it depends. I think that I feel a lot of things, and I think I feel a lot in quite a short space of time. I have ADHD. Obviously, you know I have ADHD because everyone with ADHD tells you that they have ADHD. Seems to be one of the traits of ADHD. So one thing I do experience is feeling things quite intensely, and this kind of like hyper focus. And then maybe there's a cooling off period, so it kind of gives like, you know, there's like waves of ups and downs. So kind of everything I'm filtering through that way of being, including writing and how things kind of come to me in sort of like fits and bursts, really. So I feel like a lot of the stuff that I've written, it at the time it has felt very urgent, but then I'll maybe look at it and be like, oh, I feel I feel kind of better now. But I think in terms of voice, I think I'm always looking for a perspective, not necessarily one that I haven't seen, because I don't want to, I don't think I'm so unique that the things that I'm writing about, like, no one's written about it in that way. It's the things that I want to hear. So I want Jesus to be gay. I'm not saying that he is, but I actually think it would be better if he was, So I think a lot of where these, it's not even necessarily how I maybe see and feel the world, it's kind of how I wish, or what I was hearing more of, if that makes sense. Does that kind of, because I feel like there was quite a lot to that question, so I don't know if I'm hitting all the...
I was also just being a fan, so it's fine. I totally get what you're saying. And maybe what you're speaking about reminds, like, you're at a point of writing the poem and then you do life for a bit, you get out that voice and you come back and you're a different person. And I know that we spoke a bit about, like, transformation downstairs and, like, how we change from, this work to you both is older than it is to us. To us, it's new. And for you guys, you're past this point in your life. I want to ask, maybe for my final question, about transformation in the book, like either for yourself or people transforming in the stories. Is that something that you recognize in your work, Rachel?
Yeah. I mean, I think that really, when you asked earlier, when we were downstairs, you asked what the book's about, and I think my first instinct is that it's about women and women adjacent people at different stages of life, and kind of the transformations that we go through at different points. Lava to butterfly. And it's so like literally there's some literal transformations, like Iris in one of the poems she turns into a robot, so she's the robo granny, but she gradually, after she has her hip replaced, and gradually all the rest of it until she's a robot, and things like that. It's a lot about that, I think, throughout. There's a bunch of different sequences of poems, but again, one of the ones we spoke about had a sequence of sonnets I wrote about about my relationship with my son, who at the time when I was writing, he has a few words now. He can say some words, some amazing words. Recently he told me he's growing a beard. He's 9. But he got a little rash in his face, like, my beard. But I at that time we'd been told that the doctors weren't sure if he would ever speak, and as someone who like works a lot in language, that was really hard and weird. So I wrote this sequence of poems about our relationship, which I think really was transforming a lot at that time and has since. And it's kind of about that evolution and about the moments of communication and the ways we found to communicate and how that grew outside of language. So yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of transformation.
Yeah, the whole collection. It is. I think it is transformation. You know, it's there's a lot of like retellings, as we've touched upon that, and I feel like every time you retell a story, that is an act of transformation. And I think there's a lot of power in retelling, that not only are you transforming that narrative, but it's, you know, it's not unidirectional, you are being transformed. And there's like some literal transformation in here as well. I think as well with the two languages, you know, they're kind of shifting between English and Scots, that has this kind of like, yeah, it's never static. You know, and it's always moving, and I think that like there's some poems in here that I probably won't ever read out in public again. Not because I don't like them, but I just feel like I don't need to do that. So that's been interesting to actually hold the collection and look at that and kind of see, okay, maybe this is a part of me that I don't, but you know, I'm sure there's value for other people that want to read these poems, and you know, that's great, but for me they're kind of like, they're maybe just done, and there's maybe other poems in the collection that are kind of a bit more alive for me that I want to give more space to. So that's been interesting to see as well. So yeah, I think transformation is such a big theme because it's, well, we're human beings, you know. So I think that like any kind of art that doesn't really kind of like show that, at least implicitly, it's maybe not doing a great job at whatever it is it's trying to do, you know. And I think especially when you see a collection, you know, when it's just you can see that movement and how it transforms.
Thank you so much, and I want to say I had so much fun reading these collections, so thank you so much for speaking with me, and it has, it's going to be a bit cringe to say transform, but it has transformed me. I did not plan that. We're going to end on 2 poems each from you now, and then we're going to have a wee signing. So, May, would you like to go first, since you introduced?
Have the perfect poem. Would you believe it touches on themes of transformation? And it's based on a slightly less well-known myth from Metamorphosis, so again, it's a transformation. And it's a myth about Artemis, and it's slightly less well known when she turned. It's not the one where she turns the dude into the into the stag and gets ripped apart by his own hounds, which I do love. But there's a character who catches Artemis bathing, much like Actaeon did. But instead of being turned into a stag, this person is turned into a woman. And I thought, well, that sounds a bit queer. So this poem is called Socrates Stumbles Across Artemis Bathing and is Transformed. We didn't actually plan this. Her nakedness stings my eyes and throat, my guts grow teeth. If I must, I'll chew myself up, spit out what's left at her feet. How else do I show I'm not a threat? Downstream, time broadens and slows. This is where female rage goes to cool off, a place to reflect and scheme and rejoice, wash off the noise of the day. I know I belong here. The myth of my body is submerged by a soft and damp ambiguity. The fluid spaces between sisters, lovers, hunters, hunted. The wind finds my hiding place and whispers it to her. I wonder if this is where Actaeon stood, intrusively male, moments before his transition from predator to prey. There are infinite ways she could unmake me. Instead of punishing my body, she answers its prayers. Quiet as moss, she casts my name into the river. Its boyish sound reconfigures. Cypress leaves are held against my skin until I bleed into a new shape, a body that doesn't chafe against the truth I hold inside. Oh, I thought it was just. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I can do. Yeah, for sure. So I don't read the book. I have no ideas. Okay. You know, well, let's keep it Greek. Why not? This is Greek and Scots again. Just a wee one. Arachne. Peery weary spider wifey, her thirsty threed dooked in bleed and gold. Master Webster spins disaster, silken stories, ascrich in bold. Callisto, Antiope, Europa, Persephone, warpult hashtag #MeToo tapestry. A dynasty of survivors, Lumen our the weaver, fancult and cursed, for stitching I believe her. Thank you, thank you.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. It's such a nice thing to do reading with. I think, yeah, so we were talking earlier about my jelly ear fungus, as you do. This is just literally my poem. It's one of the, I think only two that mention anything to do with Christianity, so I thought it would be, I'm an atheist, but I thought it would be appropriate considering all the Jesus love that we have been part of tonight. Also, jelly ear fungus is amazing. It's, do you know it? Yeah, it looks like an ear growing up a tree. It is edible, but it's, a friend of mine who's eaten them describes them as like very chewy. But it's one of the good ones in a sense because you can't mistake it for anything else. If it looks like an ear growing out of a tree, it's the jelly ear fungus. So yeah, this is my jelly ear fungus. Something is singing to the hymn of their own sap rising. It sounds like light. Who is speaking secrets in the leafless places? Who has longed to listen so fervently that ears grew from the thick trunk of their body? Who has heard the parable of the wild garlic? Or waited not alone in church, with their knees too far apart on the hassock, while a man presses secrets into something else's ear? Some things may be confessed only to the trees. He who has ears, let him hear. And I'm going to finish with another Iris poem. And I know you said you liked the big grannies. Yeah, who doesn't like a big granny? I'm just boring people. So, I have, can I find it? Yeah, Iris, the biggest granny in the world. And this is, do you know about a phenomenon called island gigantism? So it's where if you have a species of animal and then at some point in the course of their evolution, some population of the species ended up sort of on an island while the rest were on the mainland. And the ones on the island would evolve over time to be much bigger than the ones on the kind of bigger continent. So you end up with, like, you know, giant lizards and all of that. So where they branched off. So I've imagined that with grannies. So this is Iris, the biggest granny in the world. This is what happens on an island. With nothing to hunt them, grannies grow. Iris turns her broad back to the wind, and other grannies shelter in the lee of her body. She wades hip deep in the North Sea, plucking posies of orcas from the seabed, and her feet flatten the seabed. Her spine is the line of extinct volcanoes at the drifted edge of tectonic plates. Snow-capped, heat-tapped, her blood is sap in the trunks of her veins. Her brains are tornado. Her heart is an island in a red sea. Fisherman, fisherman, stay away. Be afraid of the island, where the giant grannies beat their naked chests and sing with the voice of the whirlpool. Their fires can be seen from the mainland, burnt offerings to the goddess of small things grown wild, to the mother of land risen up from the sea, to the spaewife, with woman, witch, the hag.
Thank you so much to you two. Yeah, I didn't know I needed to talk about gay Jesus and grannies this evening, but I feel so fulfilled and gayer than I arrived. So thank you so much. Yeah, I've been turned. This is the gay agenda. So May and Rachel, as I said, are going to be next door, waiting to chat and sign any books. Myri also has some wine by the till, and we have soft drink options as well. So please do stay and browse, and yeah, come up to these wonderful poets and have a chat. Thank you so much for being here as well.